welcome back to my channel. I'm MeoLammerz and this is obviously our channel mascot, Nubbins. For those of you who keep up with my content, I'm sorry for the delay in uploads. I've been sick for quite a while and luckily I'm starting to feel better. My voice sounds normal and we're all good. So for this video, I'm going to be giving you guys 5 easy tips on how to teach someone else how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Over my years of playing, I've been asked quite a few times by quite a few different people how I was taught how to play or how I would teach someone else how to play, and although I'm pretty sure they were asking this question because I am a girl and I'm very, very translucent in the fact that I used to hate Yu-Gi-Oh! And playing it, I think it's a question that a lot of people ask others, and I think it's a question that a lot of people need help with. So whether you're trying to teach a girlfriend, boyfriend, best friend, good friend, family member, or other how to play the game, hopefully these tips will help you out. And really quickly, if you guys would like to support me and my channel and just whatever, I do have a few links in the description down below, including a link to my Instagram so you guys can follow me and keep up with me, my life, Yu-Gi-Oh! Stuff. So yeah, check those out. Okay. So obviously it'd be preferable if the person you're trying to teach is at least the tiniest bit curious about how to play the game or wants to learn at least a little bit how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! But I will also be providing some tips that can help stubborn learners learn how to play as well, because I was one of those stubborn learners. So let's get into the tips. Okay, so tip number 1. Start them out slow. Start them out slowly. Depending on how much experience they have playing TCG card games in general or just card games, I would suggest starting them out with either a structure deck or a tier 3 or tier 4 deck. If they are a little bit more advanced in playing TCG card games or maybe have played Yu-Gi-Oh! In the past and are just trying to relearn, you can always give them a little bit of a more tier 2, maybe rogue, depending on the deck, and see how they play with that. However, for beginners especially, I recommend structure decks. I would suggest trying to stay away from decks that play pendulums or decks that have a lot of different extra deck monsters within them. It can be pretty hard to learn the difference between fusion summoning and synchro summoning for new and beginning Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, and that's why I suggest trying to find a deck that has, if you are going to start them off with a full deck, a deck that has only one kind of extra deck monster, and try to minimize the links if you're going to put any in there. In fact, I would suggest leaving them out. Quick note, I personally suggest that you actually go through the structure deck or deck that you gave them and try to teach them about the different types of cards within it. So if there's a quick play spell versus a normal spell, teach them the difference between those. Really give them a feel of the deck before you ask them to play it. That way you can teach them about normal summoning versus special summoning and so on with the mechanics. It'll make it easier for them to kind of understand how to play rather than just throwing them right into playing a deck or game they might not possibly know anything about. If you do choose to start your new player off with a full deck, I do suggest that if you're going to teach them extra deck mechanics, to start them off with Synchro or Xyz. I personally found these easier to learn, however maybe they might be different. Maybe fusions will be easier for them. It's really up to you, but that was my personal preference when I was learning. I found that Xyz were really simple. Just basically same number of stars, overlay them. Monster that has the same rank. It was pretty easy. But honestly, I do suggest trying to start them off with a deck that doesn't necessarily need an extra deck, especially if they are a brand new player, and it really does depend on card game experience in the past. Decks like Demise, End of the World, Ruin, End of the World, Demise, Ruin, End of the World, whatever combination you want of that doesn't necessarily need an extra deck, and there's quite a few others out there that don't need one either that are also really simple to play. I personally think a great deck to start a new player out with, or at least to let them lay it on the table and learn about, would be Phantasm Spiral. Even if the goal isn't for them to play the deck immediately, it's a deck that doesn't necessarily utilize an extra deck, doesn't need one. You can give it one, but it doesn't need one, and it easily teaches them about normal and special summoning. It also teaches you about the different spell and trap cards and how to activate effects and win. Overall, it's just a really simple deck that utilizes a lot of the different game mechanics and card typings, and it's really cheap if I recall correctly. I don't remember there being any super pricey cards in it. Tip number 2. Let them choose what they would like to play. Once you're done teaching them the basics and they learned how to play the structure deck or practice deck that you gave them at least semi-well, try letting them pick out what they would like to play next. I've come to notice that if you let them choose what they would like to play, they become at least a tiny bit more invested on actually learning how to play the game and continuing to play after they've gotten the basics down. Now, if you're teaching a new player with a structure deck, you could probably actually let them look into what structure decks they might want to play before you go into teaching them the basics, because structure decks are pretty simple. They can read the back of it, the description of it, and look at the cards, and you can give them a little description of either the lore or the play style and allow them to choose which deck they would like to play beforehand. However, once you give them a full deck, even if you're starting them off with a full deck in tip number 1, I do suggest that since building a deck can be a bit pricey, even surprisingly some of the weaker decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because of short reprints or only being printed once, I do suggest that if you do have a few extra decks in your collection, to just splay those out on the table and explain them to the person that you're trying to teach, and allow them to borrow those decks from you. With that being said, however, do not give them the option to choose a deck that they're obviously not ready for. Don't keep it in your closet or on your shelf or whatever. Don't bring that deck to the table knowing that this is going to be harder for them to play and possibly harder for them to grasp. Tip number 3, don't overwhelm them. Learning a new game does take time and a little bit of dedication, and this game is way more complicated than it used to be. Don't overwhelm them with card effects, chains, and extra deck monsters too soon. And I honestly suggest not playing hand traps either in their deck or in yours until they have a good handle on the cards in their deck and how to play the game. Be sure to only play a few games at a time and let them take a break when they want to or even when they need to. Like I said, this game can become a little bit overwhelming, especially for a brand new player. Even the simplest, easiest things for us to grasp, because we've been playing this game for so long, aren't really all as simple as we may make them out to be. Definitely allow them to ask as many questions as they need to and try to answer them as straightforward and as simply as possible to provide for less confusion. Visual examples can of course help too, especially if they're asking about how a certain card works or about a certain card interaction. Tip number 4, let them watch you play against somebody else. Something that has always helped me learn, even to this day, is actually watching other people play a match. It helps me learn about cards that I've never seen before and even taught me about a few card interactions that I wouldn't have known about otherwise. For someone that's new to playing Yu-Gi-Oh, I do suggest taking their deck or structure deck and using it to play a casual game against a friend. By doing this, you can play slowly and allow them to ask you about certain card choices that you made that they might not have seen before when they were playing their deck. You can also talk to them about what cards are best to play in certain situations, and it can teach them how to better interact with the opponent's field and cards. And lastly, tip number 5 is have fun. This tip is honestly the shortest tip I have. It's really simple. Make your games less about who wins and who loses and more about spending time together and enjoying the game. Just have fun and relax with it. Now, I know that these tips aren't a perfect step-by-step guide to how to teach someone how to play Yu-Gi-Oh, and I know that these tips may not work for everyone. Please remember that if the person you're trying to teach isn't really too interested into the game, it will be harder to teach them, and these tips might just not work at all. You might not actually be able to teach them how to play. If the person doesn't want to play, they're not going to learn how to play. Simple as that. Honestly, the only reason I got into Yu-Gi-Oh at all was because I found a deck that I liked. But I do hope that these tips can help guide you on how to teach someone how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And I do hope that these tips make it a little bit easier for you to teach them how to play. As always, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in our next video. Bye!